Welcome back to CEO Zone's Meet the Speaker, where we introduce chief executives and professional directors to subject matter experts, keynote speakers, and authors. If you're leading an organization with over $1 billion in revenue, your challenge with artificial intelligence isn't adoption, it's governance. You aren't looking for new toys, you're looking for architecture, stability, and risk mitigation in what's becoming a very noisy landscape. That's why today I'm really happy to have our content partner, the founder of AI for the C-Suite, Chad Harvey, with us today. Chad has a very popular, about 3 years now, running AI for the C-Suite for the seasoned executive strategists. Chad makes a unique approach to AI as not as a technologist, but he approaches it as a business leader, which I believe that chief executives and professional directors will take that approach and run with it today. So without further ado, AI is not a tool, it's not a problem, it's a system, it's a problem. Chad, how in the world do we figure all this out?
Well, Bill, we're all making it up as we go along. And even the people that built this technology aren't quite sure what it's capable of. So you're in good company.
I know every time I use it, I go, oh, and
Yeah,
it can be a bit addictive, I found out.
it can be. And as I often tell folks, today when you use whatever AI tool of choice you've got, it is the worst experience you'll ever have. And you'll be able to say the same thing tomorrow because it advances that rapidly.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're here to add value to chief executives and professional directors, both members inside our community where you're a content partner and we appreciate your content, and out here on the YouTube channel that we're working at today. So I guess my first question comes around, a lot of companies keep failing at AI. They think it's a tools problem. They I had it written a different way, but I'm thinking a whole different way, Chad. Sorry, no
Sure.
warning on Bill's babbles.
Go
The
for it, Bill.
CEO with massive infrastructure,
Hmm.
how do they make that shift, and what's that look like?
Yeah. That is the $1 million question that a lot of folks are spending a lot of time and money trying to figure out. And if you listen to enough really smart people, you're going to find some through lines in terms of the different approaches, because there are a lot of consultants out there trying to sell you a lot of different ideas about a lot of ways to answer that question that you posed. And from my perspective, one of those through lines is actually people and humanity. It's wrapping your arms around the fact that your most valuable asset isn't your intellectual property. It's not your processes and systems. It's not the products. It's not your client list. It's none of that. It's actually the people in your organization. And here's why I'm starting with a people first approach in response to your question is there are very few AI tools or systems out there right now that you can drop into your organization that come with all the necessary preconditions for launch to optimize your organization's workflows. So instead, the best approaches I'm finding are the ones that are the ground up, where you involve the mid and the frontline folks that are actually doing the work and help them understand the tools in such a way to craft and create the value that you need. And that starts with a mindset shift. It starts with a mindset shift in the C-suite about what is possible and how to use this tech. And it starts with a mindset shift with everybody that is running around very afraid that AI is going to, quote, steal their jobs, right? That's been the big theme for the last several months. And I personally think 26 is going to be the year we see an awful lot of anti-AI sentiment coalesce. And that's going to be relevant because your people don't live in a vacuum. They live in the real world. So they're going to be listening to the media. They're going to be seeing and hearing experiences from others. So your first step to address this issue and to start to answer the question that you posed is to make your folks understand that they are in a safe and secure environment. Give them the tools and the training and the equipment that they need to begin to understand this technology, and then start to inculcate, and a lot of tech leaders I speak with hate this term, but inculcate a sense of play in the work, because only through experimentation, iteration, and play are you going to be able to figure out what it is that we need to actually do to transform our systems and our processes, and not just treat this as a tool that we're dropping in from the top.
Excellent. That kind of leads right into my next question, because we think of board governance as those
Hmm.
people that tell us that we got to slow down, we got to watch our risk,
Hmm.
pump the brakes, whatever all those different words are. But on one of your podcasts, you said that it's really about the architecture. How do you explain that risk focused, protecting the brand? How do you do
Hmm.
that with AI?
We could probably spend this entire time period talking about risk allocation and risk mitigation. And there's no one answer to that question. In fact, there's at least half a dozen threads that I could pull on right now. So I'll start with a couple high level observations here, nothing groundbreaking. One is policy. You have got to have the right policies in place in your organization regarding usage. And I see two extremes. I see very permissive extremes on one hand, where organizations are like, yep, go do whatever you want. And then I see other very restrictive policies where it's nope, 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 don't do this, don't do that. And you've got to find a sweet spot in the middle. So policy is number one. I'm not just talking about usage policy, but I'm talking about policies that intersect and interact with your data governance policies that talk about where data lives, who has access to it, understanding that. And that's the second big point in terms of answering this particular question about risk is understanding where your data lives, how it lives, where it is, and what's usable with it, right? So that's a second component here of this risk, because if we don't understand where things live, then it's going to be a very high burden or a high hurdle, if you will, to craft policies and to put systems in place to mitigate that risk. The other piece of this, and enterprise levels do this very well, mid market organizations, not so much, or at least falling under the category of your mileage may vary. And that is understanding how the work gets done. I've walked into very large organizations that have gaps in their process documentation and understanding that you could drive a truck through. It takes some version of, well, Susie in accounting handles that because Susie has handled that for 25 years. Or, Bill over in AR, he understands how that gets done. And unless you understand what your processes and your flows are, then you can't begin to engineer the systems for AI in such a way to mitigate risk. So those are three areas that I would encourage leaders to take a look at when we're talking about risk and when we're thinking about how to begin implementing AI in our organizations. So I'll pause there for a second.
That's good stuff, though, uh, because it's some of the companies think that everything you do in AI ends up somehow on the internet, and
Yeah.
other companies say no, none of it could ever get out of the sandbox. And I bet you the truth is somewhere different than both of those.
Well, it is, and that goes to the larger environment that we live in right now, Bill. And this goes well beyond AI. There are two types of people and two types of organizations: those that have been compromised and those that know they've been compromised. Right? There is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide anymore. And if you think you've got everything locked down and secure, I guarantee you there is a black hat, either a state or a non-state actor out there somewhere that begs to differ. And the same through line holds true with AI. Yes, you need to be responsible. Yes, you need to be concerned about that. On the flip side, there is really, in my opinion, and I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so you're talking to a strategist here, somebody that works with a lot of organizations, not a cybersecurity pro, but in my opinion, it is almost inevitable for your personal and your professional information to get compromised at some point. There are just too many players and too many leaky holes out there to be totally secure.
You just reminded me of one of my major faux pas back in mid to late 80s. I get on Google and I'm thinking I'm on a SharePoint search site, but I
Mm-hmm.
happen to be in Google, and I
Yeah.
put in, where did I put that file? And it
Mm-hmm.
came up on Google, and it was a very private board document,
Yeah.
and it didn't, anyway,
Yeah.
so we got that. And I was sitting in Cape Town, South Africa when that happened. So I was like freaked out for a little while. In any event, in one of your articles inside of CEO Zones, our community, you gave a very strong free tip to our members, and I want to kind of share that now with the rest of the world. So
Sure.
you said that corporate strategy has about an 18 months shelf life.
Yeah.
How does the CEO build the kind of agility? I'll even throw in the ROI, right? You usually have a little bit longer than 18-month ROI.
Hmm.
Uh, how do you do that without creating chaos across hundreds, thousands of employees? Because
Yeah,
they're the smart ones, right? They're out there seeing this happen.
that's exactly right. Yeah. So your question is a really good one that I think a lot of folks inherently understand, even if they haven't been able to articulate the why. And so if we step back and we look at this and we address that fundamental assumption that I have that strategy is really only good for 18 months, we need to ask why. Well, the why behind that is because so many things are changing so quickly. And if you look even at just the volume of human generated, let alone bot or AI generated content that occurs annually, it's on an exponential growth curve. So too many things are happening too quickly for strategy to even have a 3-year timeline anymore. And how you deal with that in an organization, you still need vision. You still need to know what is that 10-year hill that our organization is looking to take. You still need a mission. People need to know why they're walking through the doors every morning. You still need strong core values. I'm a huge proponent of values based organizations. And the reason I'm a huge proponent of that is, and this goes back to the question you asked me about risk earlier. And we talked about risk policies. You can't have a policy that covers every single situation. If you did, you would have an if this then that tree that is 10,000 pages long just for one department. So the way that you navigate this, and in my opinion, the way that you handle this is you have strong vision, you have strong mission, you have strong values, you have empowered employees that understand these things and what their responsibilities are, what the swim lanes are on the broad side with their department or their business unit or the organization as a whole, and where they're able to go within those swim lanes. So I think that setting broad intention and bringing the focus down to a more human level is really important. And then in terms of how you keep this going, it's not that you should not have strategy. It's that you need to be sure that on either a quarterly or a biannual, and by biannual I mean twice a year, not every other year, a biannual basis, a lot of people confuse that, basis, that you are checking in and you are updating your strategy and treating it like a living document. And where I see a lot of organizations go wrong is they want a massive list of tactics that they can execute on over a certain period of time and then just check and say, we're done. And it doesn't matter the size of the organization or the sophistication. That's not going to get you across the finish line because we live in such a dynamic environment. And systems level disruptions are occurring at an unprecedented pace. You know, I always used to hold up the iPhone when I was asked about strategy. That's a perfect example of a systems level disruption. AI is beyond systems level disruption, but it is a systems level disruption. It's just a little bit broader than most. Geopolitical events that are outside of your control, those are systems level disruptions that impact us domestically as well as internationally. There are myriad and legion factors that contribute to why strategy should live within an 18-month bubble, but it should also be part of a broader vision. So if I was going to kind of sum all this up and land this plane, as it were, it's that set broad intention, make sure that you are clear what the organization stands for and why it stands for it, as well as what people are supposed to be doing. And make sure that you are having regular check-ins with the people that matter about the work that's getting done. Because other than doing that, you're going to have a document that everybody kind of refers to as the Magna Carta, and it's going to be outdated basically by the time it hits somebody's desk.
We have a live example inside CEO Zones for our member where my strategy was I would have 9 to 18 months before anybody on earth would be able to offer that same thing to enterprise level CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
That was before we started to develop it. Now we're down to releasing it sometime this week, I'll say. I thought it was going to be today, but we'll call it sometime this week. Uh, and everybody that's tested it loves it. They get the value. And I was on a phone call yesterday with a different AI partner, And he starts telling me about, well, this company's doing this. And I'm like, they are? So now I went from an 18-month to a 9 to 12-month to now I'm saying we got 3 to 6 months. And that's over the course of 3 months that it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe my 3 to 6 by next week will be, it's here this week.
Yeah.
But
Well, and you bring up an interesting point there too that I probably should have touched on, and that is the imperative of the speed of execution. The speed of execution and the ability to be nimble is more important now than it's ever been because, in no small part, to the rise of generative AI and AI that goes beyond generative AI, the cost of expertise is dropping to near zero. The value of experience and knowledge is changing. It's not going away, but it is changing. And we are not that far away from a world, I would posit 18 to 24 months, where large business systems will come pre-formatted and pre-canned. We've got an episode coming out with a founder. We just chatted the other week. I think that episode will be out in March or April, where they have trained their AI system on 1.6 billion processes drawn from enterprise level organizations, very solid processes. So they've got a tool right now that they are building that allows them to parachute into an organization, assess the current processes, adapt or replace them with the processes that are AI powered, and then insert the human in the loop where and when appropriate. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that that type of approach, it seems very novel today. It's going to be very outdated within another year or two. And what instead I think we're going to see are entire business units powered by these, call it company in a box systems, that your competitors can spin up like that. So all of a sudden, 100 years, 50 years, 25 years of experience, process, acumen, expertise, that can be replicated fairly easily. And I know that we've got listeners that are going to take issue with that statement. And I invite all comers. I'm welcome to have that conversation, because where we are right now is we are at a point where the biggest failure that you as a leader of an organization can have is a failure of imagination for what comes next. And what comes next looks radically different than what is and what was.
I can't agree with you more. You said that so well. Thank you, Chad. And I hope our audience is paying attention. Maybe hit go back 2 minutes and replay that again. So that gets us kind of to where I'll call the culture and how do you do that. And if you want to give us some background on this, but you use the term human-led, machine-fed philosophy, how does the CEO prevent de-skilling of junior talent? And I'll bring up a news article. As you know, I might have had something to do with some global consulting firms in my past. And one of the big brand names that all CEOs go, well, I've worked with them, so I must be pretty good. I won't use their name. Laid off 7,000 consultants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big firm, right? And blamed it on AI. But I doubt that's the truth. I just got a hunch. I blame it on they didn't have a book of business.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to human-led, machine-fed philosophy. How does a CEO deal with that?
Well, you've asked two questions there that are interrelated. So I'll touch on the first one because you raised the specter of de-skilling. And I think that that's a real hot topic right now. There's a lot of conversation going on about that. And there is no one good answer. I know I gave that as a reply to a previous question, but there is no one real good answer to that. This is one of those, we're going to figure it out as we go along. With that in mind, the de-skilling or the specter of de-skilling, I think, is very real and should be top of mind for organizations, because if you're not providing the necessary substrate for lower level employees to cut their teeth. And we're going to first see this, I think, in accounting and legal. Those are two professions that are going to be, and consulting, but accounting and legal in particular, I think we're going to see them affected first. And this is critical because if you are not providing the work for folks to gain the experience on, then they're not going to have the perspective to provide value later. And if you're not doing this, then when you go to hire those mid-level folks, you're going to be dependent, as a lot of folks are right now that don't have good internal training programs, you're going to be dependent upon how well they were trained and the experience they had at their last position. And that is no way to run a railroad. So there is, I think, a real risk of a dearth of upper junior level and lower mid-level talent over the next 5 years if we don't start to have honest conversations about how we bring people into organizations and the work that we give them to allow them to cut their teeth, gain expertise, and then develop the perspective that is necessary to oversee and manage the AI tools, systems, and processes of today and tomorrow, because the human perspective is extremely important. So when we talk about the human component here, I think that that is something that is only just now being realized by an awful lot of folks. It's the perspective and the judgment that you can apply when you're working with these systems. And one of my suppositions is that in the not too distant future, there will not be very many line level employees doing entry level work. That will be automated. It doesn't matter what industry or what sector we're talking about. And everyone, I'm using air quotes here for our audio listeners, will be a manager, right? It's just a question of, are you managing people? Are you managing people in AI, or are you just managing AI? And for that matter, how well are you collaborating with them? So that's one part here I wanted to address regarding the de-skilling. And I think you also hinted around, if I'm remembering correctly, about the issue of values in an organization. Did you surface that just now, I believe?
Well, that gets into that culture piece. So
Yeah.
keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about that. This is an area where there are not a lot of good answers. That's number 3 for me on not good answers. But the question right now, and asking that question, I think matters more than the actual having of an answer, because at least you're thinking about it. And the cultural piece is going to be directly related. I gave some answers earlier about strategy, mission, values, and the importance in an organization. The challenge here is going to be to translate those into the AI realm and ensure that the systems that you're putting in place are consistent with your organization's culture and values. I have a lot of thoughts about what that might look like. I haven't seen a lot of that in action or in practice yet, other than with some major meta prompts or system prompts on the back end that provide guardrails. I think that's one way to do it. But this goes back to an earlier point I made about you can't design policy for everything. I think the same framework or lens needs to be applied to this conversation as to the prior one, in terms of setting the broad perspective and allowing some variance within that swim lane, if you will. And I know I'm talking very broadly here, so I'll give you a very specific example or an idea, if you will, because I haven't seen anybody do this yet. I think that we, in many ways, are over-assessmentized, if I could coin a phrase here, in the mid-market and enterprise world. We're always taking assessments: DISC, predictive index, strength finders, et cetera, et cetera. That says to me that there's enough information about individuals and how they relate to the organizational values that we can mine that information to begin to establish relationships between the AI systems and the individuals, the departments in the organization, to ensure that they're aligned with and consistent with both the values and the mindset of the human as well as the organization. And I haven't seen anybody do this yet, but I think it's probably coming very soon. It would not surprise me if part of the standard package, again, I'm using air quotes here, standard package that different consultancies begin to offer in the not too distant future, is one where they map the human, they map the organization's culture and values, and then they determine alignment, and then they determine what information is necessary for individual agents in an organization, what information is going to be necessary for the larger projects or tools or AI systems that are overriding a lot of this, to ensure that they're aligned. So we're very much inventing the future as we go along here, but I think that that's one idea for a way to begin to grapple with this. And there's going to be some very smart machine learning scientists and other folks that come along with tools and techniques that I'm sure far surpass my meager swing at that ball. But be that as it may, That's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, is how do we ensure that alignment with the values of an organization and an individual, and then autonomous or semi-autonomous AI systems.
You made me think of three guests that I need to introduce you to so you can have them on your show. But one of them, from Johns Hopkins, is the neuroscientist behavior AI president.
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
Yeah.
And in the event, you get on the phone with him, and he's thought through biorhythms and how that would cause an AI engine to need a tune-up because of this little thing we wear on our wrists nowadays.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
And it can tell you, hey, you're thinking this, but your fingers are doing this, or you're talking this way, and it checks you. And it's pretty cool.
Well, and you raise a really important peek at the future there too, Bill, in that right now, an awful lot of folks are still thinking about these AI systems through the keyboard interface, chat, 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 or maybe through some graphics or images that we upload that we ask them to work with. Where we're going here is a very, very near future where video and audio, as well as still and still type interface, is all part of the medium. And I don't want to sound big brotherish. However, I think it's very reasonable to assume that the skill and the speed with which a lot of the vision processing is occurring right now will be able to allow AI systems to adapt to the individual user based on not just the visual cues that they're seeing through the screen, but also the biometrics that you identified. And that opens up an entire world of personalized work and personalized agentic AI that I don't think we're capable or prepared to deal with at the moment. Yet it's going to happen.
He opened that up for me in a discussion. Now, it's not quite there yet. I said, show me. And he's like, well, no, we're working on it. But anyway.
Love it.
I said, I went through Missouri once. Show me. No,
yeah, right.
Yeah. So that kind of moving from a tiptoe into culture. Now let's go back into kind of a leadership, because our chief executives, professional directors, they got this, it's precision. Even our logo over the holidays, now that we're in the first quarter, we changed our slogan to high-tech precision with high humanity, high-touch humanity. And because of we're dealing with in our community, that we then said uncompromising legacy, because we see all of these tools taking that titan of industry, the 5 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion, who's been in his or her seat for 7+ years. They're sitting there going, what are you doing to my business? Right. And so we're trying to get ahead of that and give them the tools so they know the right tools to get to, right? Which is my little secret that we'll come out with. Because it's clear that we're 20 some minutes in and we are not going to finish everything, but I would love to learn from you. So let's go to I'm going to skip a couple questions and get right down to the money shot here.
Okay.
If you had 5 minutes with one of our members, which you get that opportunity in the community, but let's go broader now.
Yeah.
You had 5 minutes with the CEO. They're a Fortune 100, 200, whatever it might be. And they've banned it. They've banned generative AI because it's too risky. What if something goes wrong? I don't want my crisis manager. I don't want Jeff Chatterton, one of our content partners, getting hired because we blew it on there. How do you convince them to actually increase the amount of risk, because the ROI is so much greater on the other side? Is there an answer to that one, or is that number 4?
No, there is an answer for that one. And the answer is real simple. It's a question. Do you want to be in business in 3 to 5 years, or do you want to be fire sailing your organization for pieces? It's really that stark. And here's why it's stark. One of the examples that I like to give when talking about AI is to hit the rewind button and go back to the age of electrification. And when electricity was first starting to be deployed, almost every factory was steam powered. And so you had a lot of factory owners that strung lights in the factories so that they could run second and third shifts using electric light. And they were all proud. That doesn't mean you've got an electrified factory. That's where we are right now with AI. We are stringing lights in steam-powered factories, and we're claiming that it's AI-powered or electrified, if you want to go back to my original example. It is not. And the people that are figuring out how to build AI powered factories, electric factories, if you will, those are the ones that are going to eat your lunch. They may be in existence right now. They may just have already been in existence for the last 5 or 10 years, but they're smaller and more nimble than you. When you dig in and you refuse to experiment and take risks because of the what if factor, that in many ways is a prudent decision in a normal operating environment. We are looking at normal in the rearview mirror and waving bye-bye. Normal packed its bags and left the building sometime in the early to mid 2010s. And for anybody that didn't get that memo, it's time to wake up. So if you don't start to experiment, if you don't start to loosen the reins and take some responsible risks, then you will be fire sailing your company for parts.
So I trust that chief executives, professional directors in our audience, both in the community, out on YouTube, on LinkedIn, wherever they're getting this today, you heard Chad, because it's not all about efficiency. There's risk, there's architecture, and there is absolutely legacy to be had here.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to go there, but I remember some of the original ERP companies. It wasn't the best product that got used by most of the world back in the day. You're too young to know that, Chad, but I was around for that. Back when there was IBM punch cards at my Air Force job to make sure payroll for the entire Air Force went through on punch cards. I'm that old. Anyway, if Chad is right, which I believe he is, we're entering an era where speed of change is going to outpace traditional corporate strategy. It's happening here, even in my little company called CEO Zones, where we serve members for CEOs in the environment of $1 billion and larger. It's happening to us as we get prepared to serve them. I do invite everyone to check us out at ceozones.com. You're welcome to join our community. Our qualifier is you must be $1 billion or more, be the CEO, not a C-suite, but the CEO, or a professional director of that size organization. To contact Chad directly, he's very visible. He has chadharvey.com as his domain name and chad@chadharvey.com as his email address. Chad, it's really been a pleasure. I hope you'll allow me to have you back, because I'd like to go deeper into this on a couple of the questions. And then I naturally had a few more questions. And there's probably 3 or 4 people I forgot to introduce you to, but as you were explaining some of those things today, you need to meet some of our other AI partners.
I look forward to it, Bill, and I enjoyed our conversation as well.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.